So this is where we want to focus on getting ourselves, and it really doesn't take that long as you're stacking conditions. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today when I share with you an optimal nighttime routine and the different components that you can utilize, that you can pick and choose from, or take the whole shebang and create an epic nighttime ritual to get epic sleep and have epic days every day. So I want to share with you really quickly how every habit is essentially created. And this comes from the work of Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit. Now, every habit begins with a psychological pattern called a habit loop. All right, it's called a habit loop. And this is a 3-part process. The first part, there's a cue, right? There's a trigger of some sort that tells your brain to go into automatic mode and let the behavior happen. So Michael Hyatt, who was on the show recently, this incredible episode, he talked about something called activation triggers. So things that initiate behavior for you. So for him, he has his lights shut off automatically in his office at, I believe, 5 o'clock to let him know he has to get out of the office, right? He's trained himself. He's created this activation trigger so that he's not bleeding over and not sticking to what he holds most dear, which he's crushing it in his business, but his family matters first. So for him to unplug, get out of the office, he set an activation trigger that you can't be here. Lights go off. You don't have to go home, but you got to get the heck out of here. That's how he set it up. And so we need to create these activation triggers for ourselves. We already have them, but oftentimes they're for behaviors that might not be advantageous to us. So first thing, there's a trigger, there's a cue. Then there's the routine aspect. And this is where the behavior itself happens. So you have the trigger, then you have the behavior itself. And this is what people think oftentimes when they think about habits is this part. So the actual action for Michael Hyatt is for him to leave his office. That's the habit aspect. That's the routine aspect that we see on the surface. But there was first a trigger. The third step that he talks about in The Power of Habit is the reward. This is very important, the reward. And this is something that your brain likes that helps it to remember this habit loop in the future. So you get something by doing the habit. And so often we try to change our habits. We're very good at creating, quote, bad habits in our culture. You know, people have a smoking habit or a drinking habit or a sugar habit or a sex habit. Shout out to Eric Benet, messing it up with Halle Berry. But the thing is, we have these different habits that are not serving us in one way or another, and they are popularized. But we don't talk about all the good habits that people can construct, right? We really don't hear much information out there about that. And you know what? Here's some things to help you to create healthy habits versus all this conversation about bad habits and the drama that they bring. So you can create these good habits, but you have to anchor them, right? We have to have that reward, and we leave that part out oftentimes, and this is really the secret. So now that you know about the habit loop, we can go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper. And I love this quote, and this is from Samuel Johnson, and I've said this quote many times. I love this quote so much. The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken. Your life is really a result of your habits. The life that you have right now in this moment is a result of your habits. It's not the things that you've done every now and then. It's the things that you've done consistently that have led you to this point. And moving forward, your habits are going to create the life of your future. And this is the opportunity to be a conscious creator of those things and not let the environment dictate what you do with your life. So when it comes to building your nighttime rituals, it starts with this very important word, which is consistency, right? Consistency. This is really the foundation of the whole thing. And consistency specifically in time, and the time that you do these things in your life is going to help to really solidify this evening ritual. And this is a major key from everything from brain health to fat loss to maximum sleep benefits, which you're going to learn about. And little do people know, there's this new phenomenon out there when people are jumping around in the times that they're going to bed based on what day of the week it is, based on the different activities, what might be on TV, what's going on with the kids, and jumping around in their sleep time and creating this new phenomenon called social jet lag, right? Social jet lag. So we think that Friday rolls around, just got paid, Friday night, money in my pocket. Hey, right? We Friday's here, time to go and just, let the hair down, get out, go do stuff, go out. It's the weekend. Finally, time to sleep in as well. Stay up late, sleep in. And experts have found that this can throw off your biological clock as if you've flown across the country. And many people are doing this every single weekend. And this social jet lag is, and this is a quote from Till Ronneberg, and he's a PhD professor at the University of Munich Institute of Medical Psychology in Germany. He says the discrepancy between what our body clock wants us to do and what our social clock wants us to do is what social jet lag really is. And it almost looks as if people on Friday evening fly from Paris to New York City, and then back home on Monday morning, they fly back again. That's really what's kind of going on in our bodies with the change in the timing. And so this is why Mondays, they call it the Monday blues, right? You got a case of the Mondays, right? What's wrong? You got a case of Mondays? This is what we're seeing here. And what makes Monday so difficult for people is because the sleep cycle has been thrown off so much. It's this social jet lag we're creating for ourselves. And we're going to come back and talk more about this. So I want you to understand this really important term, which is biological rhythms. Biological rhythms. Your body, as crazy as it sounds, is lined up literally in sync with the diurnal patterns of the planet, right? It's in sync with also the nighttime patterns of the planet. You're synced up with nature. We're kind of hiding out from nature a little bit, but nature still finds us, right? We're still in sync with nature. And so our bodies are looking for a very specific day and night cycle. This is how we've evolved. But only today can we basically manufacture a second daytime and just throw all caution to the wind, do the laptop lap dance till early in the wee hours of the morning because we can, we can today. Whereas our ancestors knew no such thing, right? So we're creating this kind of social jet lag and we're living in it. Many people are living in this and just it's looming over them all the time. And they're wondering why they don't feel well. So underlying everything is the consistency and understanding the biological rhythm, right? Your body is always looking for a pattern to sync up with nature. And that consistency is really the key. So we're going to come back and talk about this more, but I want to dive in and talk about the brain health, fat loss, sleep benefits here a little bit more. So let's look at this evening ritual, this consistency and the influence that it has on our body weight, for example. Now, there's a recent study that was published in the journal Current Biology where they looked at the habits of 65,000 adults and found that people with different workday and weekend sleep schedules had tripled the odds of being overweight. What? Crazy, huh? That's straight up nuts. And even more, the body mass index of overweight people tended to rise as the gap between their weekday and weekend time zones widened. So the more that they strayed from their weekday routine, the more that their body mass index grew as well. There's a correlation directly from that. So that should be pretty eye-opening in and of itself to notice a pattern like that. And this is speaking to all of the really miraculous things that are happening for your metabolism while you're asleep. And we've covered many of these on the show and gone in depth into them. And one of those is melatonin, right? We know about melatonin as this glorified sleep hormone, but it's also a powerhouse hormone to support your metabolism and fat loss. But again, these aren't the things you'll hear about in popular media yet. We're changing that. We're pushing this into culture. But behind the scenes, this has been well known by researchers for a long time and its influence. So, and how does this work? Well, this was in the journal Pineal Research. And this study demonstrated that melatonin increases your body's production of something called brown adipose tissue. Brown adipose tissue, or brown fat, or bat fat. All right, you can call it bat fat for short. And brown adipose tissue functions more like muscle in the fact that it burns white adipose tissue. All right, think of the Joker. All right, this is kind of the gooey stuff that we're trying to get rid of. Right. So this is really the disparity here with these two different types of fat. So brown fat is kind of, quote, good fat, physically, our physical good fat. And the more that our body produces it, the more that we're going to burn off this excess body fat. Melatonin does that. And here's the major key is that it's only secreted in optimal amounts with a consistent light and dark cycle. Okay, it's only secreted in optimal amounts with a consistent light and dark cycle. Your body needs darkness in order to produce optimal amounts of melatonin. And the shorter we're making our darkness window, the less we're getting the benefits of melatonin, specifically for this aspect we're talking about. But there's many other things that melatonin is obviously important for as well. So we're setting ourselves up for failure, essentially, when we're blocking out having a consistent evening routine and ritual by throwing caution to the wind and diving into the new Iron Fist series on Netflix. And shout out, love it, Marvel fan, DC fan as well. I don't want to create any controversy out there. Somebody posted the other day, it's like, Shawn, I love Marvel. Marvel's better than DC. I'll admit that, but Batman's better than all of them. It's like, hey, I got to respect that, bro. Got to respect it. So obviously another crucial impact that melatonin has on our overall health and performance is our sleep quality itself. And we've done an episode recently talking about how melatonin is a big influence over your body's sleep cycle, right? So we broke down in the episode on energy and building physical energy, which we'll put that in the show notes if you happen to have missed it. Incredible powerhouse episode. But your brain is cycling in and out of different stages. And those stages are what dictate what area of sleep we are in. And each area of sleep we're in is correlated with different endocrine processes and nervous system processes. So hormone function, nervous system function, depending on what your brain waves are doing. And melatonin is a gear shift to help your body to move in and out of those stages of sleep, if that makes sense. So if melatonin is not being produced at an optimal level, or it's even suppressed, you're not going to be cycling through your normal stages of sleep properly. And even if you got 8 hours of time unconscious on a mattress, you might wake up feeling like a hot mess, right? A hot flaming mess of poo, right? You're going to take the bag and you're going to light it on fire. That's how I do. You might end up like that. You don't want to end up like that. And the big key here is making sure we're producing optimal amounts of melatonin every night. Give our body what it deserves. Now, another aspect of having a consistent evening routine is that it naturally reduces cortisol. Because as we talked about earlier, probably the biggest leverage point of having a consistent nighttime routine is the fact that it eliminates the uncertainty surrounding sleep. And it takes a big part of the stress away. And that's what we want to do for ourselves. Not just for the fact of the kind of noticeable outer perimeter of it where we feel less stress, but what's going on in our bodies when we reduce cortisol. So one of the big things that happens here is that we're protecting our lean muscle mass. Cortisol has been given a bad name and is treated like a straight up villain, but it's not, just misunderstood. Cortisol is actually one of the most important hormones that we have. It does so many different things. It even helps with our thyroid function. Just so many good things that it does. But when it's produced in the wrong amounts and at the wrong time, then it can truly cause some problems for us, in the fact that reducing cortisol can help to protect your muscle mass, because cortisol can tear your muscle down. It can literally start to break down all of that muscle that you've worked so hard to build and turn it into glucose, right? It's a process called gluconeogenesis. Cortisol can break down your valuable lean muscle tissue, which muscle is your body's fat-burning machinery. We really have to understand that over and over and over again. Muscle is your body's fat-burning machinery. When people talk about how can I burn fat, get rid of fat, you need to build some muscle. That's the machinery that burns that stuff away. But cortisol, being in a hyper-stress state, can literally tear that machinery down. Not cool, not cool. So that's number one, protects your lean muscle mass. Also, reduction in cortisol. Cortisol is catabolic. It's a very catabolic hormone, which you need things to break you down. Catabolic basically means breaking down of things. That enables the building up. Like you need both. You can't just stay the same. There's this constant process always happening of breakdown, build up, right? But we need the build up part too. And so many of us are stuck in this kind of catabolic state more often. We're not getting that anabolic side. So catabolic versus anabolic. So when cortisol is reduced, there's an instant increase in anabolism, right? This building up of recovery, rejuvenation, growth, right? That's what we want. Also, with the reduction in cortisol, through having a consistent evening routine, reduces stress-induced inflammation. A big part of carrying around excess weight is its inflammation. You know, your body's a protective mechanism to help to buffer inflammation. It's like a little fire, basically. Inflamed flames. It's like kind of this internal fire that's happening in our cells. So this helps to reduce that inflammation. And to just even throw in an extra little nugget here, with our sleep quality being influenced by optimal melatonin, we're intrinsically going to have optimal amounts of testosterone, which is another one of these anabolic, very beneficial hormones for men and women having the right ratios of testosterone. And we did an entire episode dedicated specifically to the impact that sleep has on sex and that sex has on sleep, and this really interesting relationship that these two things have. And it's actually called sleeping together sometimes, right? And it's incredible when you look at the data and how these two things influence each other. But testosterone is a big player in that whole equation. And there was a study that was published in 2011 that I talked about in that episode. And this was in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And they found that young men who were sleep deprived over 1 week, just 1 week, five days, so this one work week, and they were getting just 5 hours of sleep per night, saw their testosterone levels drop by 15%. And that might not sound like a lot, but that was as if they were suddenly 10 to 15 years older. Simply from being sleep deprived, having an abnormal sleep cycle for just 5 days. And so how often, again, are we doing this in smaller doses sometimes? Of course, maybe we're getting, we're 7 hours over here, then 5, then 6.5, then 8, and just kind of bouncing around, make up for it on the weekend. All this inconsistency can be just as negative as having a straight, consistent time of having the same amount of sleep, which is probably under what your body really needs. All right, because it's all about the biological rhythms. And that's the big takeaway from today. That's something to write down, remember, biological rhythms. Now, before we get to the optimal evening routines, let's move on and talk about heart health, right? Let's talk about our heart health and how the evening routine, the consistency in our ritual, our nighttime ritual, has an impact on your heart health. This is crazy. Listen to this. The number of heart attacks from that 1 hour change with daylight savings time, the number of heart attacks increases by 24% on the Monday after the spring daylight saving time. Huh? Crazy, right? And this was compared with the daily average for the week surrounding the start of daylight saving time. And this was a 2014 study. This was published in the journal Open Heart. All right. And this is becoming a little bit more well-known. I saw this in the media a little bit more this year as the daylight savings times just passed. But what? 24% increase in heart attacks. That's like a collective sleep deprivation of a lot of people at once. That's why the number rises like that. Now, even more interesting, this was a 2016 study. It's a little bit more recent. That was published in the Journal of the American Academy of Neurology, found that the overall rate for stroke was 8% higher in the 2 days after daylight savings time. And people who were older than 65 were 20% more likely to have a stroke after the spring daylight savings time. So just a change in the consistent evening routine, just like that, increases our risk of health problems. And I love this statement by Christopher Barnes, and he's an associate professor at the University of Washington. And he said that when we change the time by 1 hour, it throws a monkey wrench into our circadian process. And he said that the following Monday, we've discovered that people have about 40 minutes less sleep on average. And because, this is the big key here, because we're already often short on sleep to begin with, the effects of this just 40 minutes is even more noticeable. And that's really the key. We're already crazy pants with our sleep quality, sleep consistency. And then we throw this in the mix. That's why we see those spikes. So not just because you had less sleep in one night, in one instance, because your body's very, very resilient and you're going to be fine, especially, people who've got kids, who've got stuff going on. You're going to have times where you don't get the best sleep at night. But that doesn't mean you're going to have a higher risk necessarily of having any of these issues. It's when it's a consistent thing plus a bigger sleep deprivation on top of that. That's where the problems really come into play. So we've covered the impact that an evening routine can have on your weight, that can have on your heart health, what's going on in your brain. Really, really powerful influence that it has. So let's dive in and change gears and talk a little bit more about creating an optimal evening ritual for yourself. And this starts with going back to when you were the baby you, all right? Stroll back in time with me. So for myself, for example, when I was younger, up until the age of around 6, I lived with my grandmother. And it was a very consistent structure in life there in that household with her. And my evening routine was set. Like I remember it so clearly. Even then, we had a specific evening routine, and I just remember sleeping so good. And the first thing was we take a bath. I'd get a bath. She'd have me take a bath, and I remember just getting dried off and just having a nice warm towel and putting on. Next thing was putting on the pajamas. Right? There's another neural association linked to that process, right? I'm putting on my bedtime clothes, okay? That's a powerful activation trigger, okay? So, and of course it was the onesie thing with the feet, right? With the whole jump in with the zipper, right? Some adults still wear those today, apparently. I've seen out on Instagram. But, I had one of those bad boys or a few of those. Put that on. Those are my pajamas. And then I would be ushered upstairs to my bed. And from there, we would say our prayers. She'd have me say my prayers. And I would do that. And at the end of the prayer, my prayer ended with saying, and I'm thankful for. And then I would list all the people that I'm thankful for in my life. And sometimes the list would be pretty long, but my grandmother would bear with me. She's probably ready to go to bed herself. But, I'd do that process. She'd tuck me in, and then I went to sleep. After leaving that consistent environment of my grandmother's house and moving in with my mother, the routine was much more sporadic and unpredictable, for sure. There was not really a routine involved. And as a result, my sleep was a lot more unpredictable, obviously, in of itself. And I cannot say that this is the cause, but there's definitely a correlation to my behavior changing, where I would start to get in a lot more trouble when I changed schools as well. But of course, the environment's going to influence that as well. But I remember thinking like I should not do this thing and still doing it anyways, right? There was like this break there in my social control, right? That prefrontal cortex that starts to go cold when you're more sleep deprived. And UC Berkeley actually did brain imaging scans, and they showed this, and I actually showed those scans in my book, Sleep Smarter, and found that that prefrontal cortex, quote, goes cold, and the amygdala, the more reaction-based part of your brain, lights up. And so I would get to basically a point where I'm like, I wonder how I'm going to get in trouble today, right? And it's just like having the two things on your shoulder. But this is the thing, is you start to become aware of these things when you get a little bit older. Like, wait a minute, why was that stuff going on? Because we don't really know when we're in it oftentimes. And that carried over into my teenage years, where I definitely saw various times when in high school specifically. I remember freshman year of high school, I felt so many times like I was just straight up in a dream. I just couldn't wake up. I was not fully there. Like, I know that I'm not here. I'm not fully Shawn. I'm not fully here in my body. And I would use like caffeine gum and like Surge. I don't know if you remember Surge, this crazy soda with all this caffeine in it. They straight gave that out for free. They came to our school and there was like containers of it. You get free Surge. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to kids? And so that and a few other things just try to wake me up. And eventually that kind of progressed out of that, if I could say that, to where I didn't really feel like that anymore. But I don't know if I just became adapted to not fully being present. And this was also leading up to the time where, I had the bone degeneration disease take over, where I broke my hip shortly thereafter. And also the ultimate diagnosis of this spinal degeneration, because I was so malnutrition and so unhealthy. But I know that my sleep was unhealthy as well. And patterns were created when I was younger. But I did have that snapshot of what it was like to have a consistent routine. So now I want to share with you, as an adult, how we can employ these things and bring them back into our lives to have the health and the body and the consistency that we really want. So the optimal evening routine, and this is an important caveat, you can take pieces of this, and this isn't going to be in a specific strict order, but I'm just laying out some things and how I've been doing them and what I found to be successful and what I've employed in patients' lives as I've worked, clinically over the years as well. So the optimal evening routine is generally going to begin an hour before you plan on going to bed. So if you plan on getting to bed at 10:30, you're going to start this process at 9:30. First step is shutting off or putting away all of your blue light emitting devices. All right, this is the first thing. When the evening routine kicks into play, we're getting off our blue light blocking devices. And why does this matter? Well, there's a study conducted by Harvard Medical School that found that exposure to light at night throws the body's hormonal clock out of whack and devastates your sleep quality. Researchers conducted an experiment looking at the effects of blue light exposure at night, like you get from the screens of your everyday tech devices, to exposure of green light of comparable brightness. The blue light suppressed melatonin for twice as long as the green light and shifted circadian rhythms by twice as much. And basically, every hour of blue light exposure suppressed melatonin for an additional 30 minutes. I've shared this many times before. So this is one of those things that you're seeing a lot on the interwebs, different articles you hear in the media. I've been talking about this for half a decade. We have to have a better relationship with our tech devices. I love my iPhone. We're friends. We have an understanding, because I know that sometimes they can take advantage of me. All right. Sometimes they can take me for granted, mistake my kindness for weakness. And I say, look, iPhone, we got to talk about this. We got to change some things. And they're always like, okay, cool. Just turn me off. I'll see you tomorrow. So that's really kind of understanding what's happening behind the scenes with this and what it's doing to your melatonin, your sleep cycle, your biological rhythms. This is why this is a valuable thing to do. So with that said, we have to fill that space with something of greater or equal value. We talked about this earlier about habit creation. We have to have the pleasure component. We have to something that the brain likes. The brain already likes Instagram. It likes Twitter, Facebook, YouTube videos. We can't just go cold turkey like that. We have to fill that with something of greater or equal value. And we'll talk about what some of those things can look like in a moment. But, or there are hacks that we can use, because I'm not perfect about this by any means. But on a consistent basis, for the majority of time, this is what I'm doing. However, if we are going to watch a movie a little bit later than normal, or TV show, or I have to work a little bit more, something kind of unexpected, or I'm working on maybe some research or whatever the case might be, this is when an hour before my prospective bedtime to break out the blue light blocking tools. So whether it's on your iPhone, set it and forget it. Use the tool on your phone, built into your phone right now, called Night Shift. Set the time, set it and forget it, and it pulls out the most troublesome spectrum of light automatically from your screen. All right? That one thing, super simple. For your computers, desktop, laptops, Flux, F.lux. Great app. I've been using it for about 4 years. Again, just go to Dr. Google, type in F.lux, a couple clicks, boom, it's on your computer, set it and forget it, and it works like gangbusters. All right? Now, what is gangbusters anyways? My engineer's here in the studio with me. Usually he got random insights and trivia, things like that. But do you know what gangbusters is?
It's a police officer that busts up gangs.
Okay, well, there you have it. And so it is. Now we all know what gangbusters are. It's gangbusters or ghostbusters. Shout out to Slimer and Peter Venkman. All right, now, also, for all the kind of ambient light and the other lights in your house besides the television, laptop, desktop, stuff like that, blue light blocking glasses, right? So basically, this is screen protection. Your eyes and that blue light are sort of like having sex. Kind of having sex. You need to wear protection or you might get something, all right? So hope you understand that. So that protection is the blue light blocking glasses and or these different apps on our devices. So for the glasses that I use, and I've tried so many, I use Swannies because they actually look cool and they work amazing, like over 99% effectiveness for blocking out blue light. And so you can go to themodelhealthshow.com/glasses. And you can find the Swannies, a special discount there only for us. All right, themodelhealthshow.com/glasses. So when it basically gets dark outside, I throw my Swannies on and just go on about my business. So that's number one, an hour before bed. Next up, Bodywork. All right, Bodywork. This is something that you can employ into your nighttime routine. With Bodywork, we start with basic massage. So massage helps to release endorphins, okay? And these are kind of these feel-good compounds that buffer stress. It reduces stress in your body. And then there's acupressure, right? There's acupressure. And there's a comprehensive study that was conducted, and this was done in Italy, and it found that 60% of patients with sleep disorders had an improvement in sleep quality after 2 weeks of acupressure treatment. Crazy. 60% of people had improvement. And they used the HT7 point, which is right here at the bottom of your wrist, if you could see this on YouTube, and just manipulating that point. And it also helps to increase the metabolites, the melatonin metabolites. So your body's either producing more / using it more efficiently as well, simply by, it's crazy, right? Touching a point on your wrist can do that, bananas. But your body it has this really intricate hyper intelligence, this innate intelligence that's governing all this stuff, and everything is connected. So fascinating stuff. Also, of course, partner massage. This could be a little bit more interesting or something you enjoy more than scrolling on Twitter, maybe. But a partner massage, you get the added benefit of oxytocin, right? This is kind of the love compound. The cuddle is often referred to as the cuddle hormone. But clinically, this has been found, and I cited this study in Sleep Smarter, to protect your body against the effects of cortisol. So oxytocin benefit. And then there's self-massage as well. You could do the manipulation with the acupressure. You could do the foam rolling. You can do, I like to get a tennis ball and roll that under my foot, or you can use a lacrosse ball, which you gotta, it could be a little bit more tender if you're pressing down on that lacrosse ball. But these are different options because there's a lot of acupressure points on the bottom of your feet. And of course, the foam rolling, like I mentioned, but something that Dr. Kelly Starrett talked about, and I literally added this chapter to Sleep Smarter, the big version that was published with Rodale, because of his insight and the fact that in your gut, you have the vagus nerve that connects your gut to your brain. And we know how we're very, very good in our society as humans to go from 0 to 100. We can go from 0 to 100 real quick. Some people are going to know what I'm saying. You can go from 0 to 100 real quick, but going from 100 to 0, not so easy. Not so easy. All right. Now, how can we do that? The vagus nerve actually sends data, more data, about 90% of the information is your vagus nerve in your gut, from your gut to your brain, telling your brain what to do. So to slow down, shut down. It's basically a parasympathetic hack, a parasympathetic nervous system activation you can get by getting one of those little, often referred to as a princess ball. Those little rubber balls are like in the Big Ben at Walmart, right? Grab one of those little balls and you put it down on the floor, then you lay your body on top of it. You lay your belly on top of that ball and just work it around in that abdominal architecture, all right, and massaging in there. And that's one of those things that can help to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. And I feel that even 5 minutes would suffice. And another thing that we can add into our evening ritual, and this was a study, this was published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology and Occupational Physiology, found that a hot bath 90 minutes before bed improved sleep quality and helped participants to get greater amounts of deep anabolic sleep. How do parents know? How do my grandma know? You know, that nice hot bath a little bit before bed. So specifically, it's 90 minutes out. I want to make this clear because getting out of the bathtub and going straight to bed, you know, within maybe 10 minutes, not the best idea because your body temperature is still elevated. And we've talked about this many times, thermal regulation and this process that your body undergoes. There's literally a drop in your core body temperature when it gets dark outside to help facilitate sleep. And if we forcefully elevate that really close to when we go to bed, that can be a problem. Same thing with exercising too late because it elevates your core body temperature. And it's kind of a little bit more difficult to bring it down via the exercise because there's so many internal things firing, if that makes sense. Whereas in the tub, this is more of like an external influence. And your body, and here's the really cool part, is that taking the hot bath, your body temperature actually drops lower than it would have after a certain amount of time. So it helps to even support that core body temperature drop if you time things appropriately. That's why they say 90 minutes here. So this is something that I like to do from time to time. I don't do this on a consistent basis, but especially if I know that I'm, sore or maybe I've had a rough night of sleep, maybe the night before, this is something I like to add into the mix. And I'll do a magnesium soak. So I'll actually add this incredible magnesium. It's called Deep Soak. And this is actually from Activation Products where I get my Ease Magnesium spray that I use every night. And so this is something that you add to your bath water. And you can find that at easemagnesium.com/model as well. So you can check that out there. So I'll do that, which speeds recovery because basically we're talking about the historical uses of Epsom salts, which is magnesium sulfate. This is a supercritical extract. This is like 1,000 times more effective, and you can use such a smaller amount. And man, it makes you feel so good. Like you feel really, really relaxed. So that's another thing that you can add into your evening routine. But if you're going to do this, make it consistent. Even a hot shower, but make sure you give yourself a little bit of time for your core body temperature to come back down. Another part here to, again, shift gears with what's going on with your brain, especially for people who have a lot of inner chatter, you got to really do this. And setting yourself up for success the next day is journaling. You could do a little bit of journaling / scripting your day for tomorrow. I love doing that process of writing out the things that I'm going to accomplish, those bullet points. And there's this really interesting thing. Your brain is always looking to solve puzzles, solve patterns, and your unconscious mind is able to work overnight to help you to fulfill those goals much easier. All right. And there's sound research on this as well. So utilize the power of your mind and your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind, by scripting out your day the night before. That's a really, really nice thing. It also helps to kind of put stuff out of your head. Another thing that you can employ here is to read a physical book. And this is a practice that I employ most nights of the week. I'm going to be reading something as a part of my evening ritual. Or you can listen to an audiobook or podcast, all right? This doesn't require you to stare into the screen the whole time. You could just turn the podcast on or the audiobook and have your headphones on and just chill. This is a really valuable, cool thing that you can do that is on par with, just kind of surfing around, looking at random YouTube videos. There can be some of the same benefits that you find there in, maybe you're studying some marketing material or relationship advice, whatever it is, you can get in audiobook form or podcast form. So I really like to do that as well. This is something that my wife definitely does. She does that far more often. And speaking of wives, AKA significant others, one of the other parts of your evening process could be to have some fun with them, to hang out with them, to actually talk to your significant other, talk to your spouse. It's crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but you can actually have a conversation with them and ask them what's going on in their life, what their goals are, what's going on in the day, what their plans are for tomorrow, what they're interested in. You can talk to another human being. And also your significant other. Hopefully, as we talked about on the sex/sleep episode, this is another thing that could be added to your sleep process, your sleep routine. But this is something that you don't want to schedule 9:30, we're going to it's missionary. And no, we're not talking about being some kind of robotic thing here. We're talking about just open the opportunity for that by you not being distracted by being on Instagram, okay? And I'm not trying to diss Instagram. I love Instagram. Again, holler at me on Instagram at Shawn Model, at ShawnModel for that recovery protein recipe, all right, if you want to get that from me. So I love Instagram, but your relationships, your most intimate relationships are far more important. And so hopefully that would be more entertaining than being on Instagram and Facebook and watching YouTube videos if you have some intimate connection with your significant other. Another part of this evening process for me is as I'm walking back to the bedroom, I turn the temperature down because we talked about the thermal regulation already. And the optimal temperature, according to experts, is between 62 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the optimal range. My wife, she's from Kenya. She doesn't like the cold that much. She doesn't like it. All right. But she does find that her sleep is so much better when she is cooler, when the environment is cooler. Of course, we got our covers and things like that. Her issue, though, is getting out of the bed in the morning when it's cold. She's like, the covers are too cozy. So what I do, our kind of happy medium, I get out of bed first and I go turn the heat up. And that's what we do, and it's worked out great for us. Next thing is shutting out all the artificial light in your bedroom. This should be an automatic part of your nighttime ritual. And I said artificial light. So this is if you're in suburban neighborhoods or city kind of urban areas where you've got street lights coming in and car lights, these LEDs and maybe your porch light, neighbor's porch light, that kind of thing beaming into your bedroom. We want to shut those things out. Make sure you get yourself some blackout curtains if your environment's like that. If you live in an environment where you're not exposed to those things, don't worry about it. We're not talking about natural light, moonlight, light from the stars, things like that. Humans have evolved with those things. That's all good. If you look at their lux, the luminance from those things, and now there's a luminance chart, this lux chart in Sleep Smarter, you see that moonlight is negligible, like super, super. It's almost reverse bad for you. It's like, well, reverse bad for you, it's good for you. So, and its benefits, right? And so it also is another one of these influences over our cycles. Our biological rhythms is moonlight. So shut out artificial light, brush your teeth, all right? Brush your teeth. That's another thing that's a part of your bedtime ritual, but just doing it in the same process, plugging it in a certain position consistently helps your brain to know that it's getting ready for bed. And for me, after I brush my teeth, this is when I rub the magnesium, topical magnesium into my skin. And this is something I've been doing for many, many years. I travel with it. When I just got back from this trip to the Philippines, you better believe I brought my Ease Magnesium along with me. And here is why. This is why. The Journal of Research in Medical Sciences found that supplementation of magnesium has been found to improve factors such as sleep efficiency, total sleep time, sleep onset. So this is falling asleep after you get into bed, so the sleep latency, preventing early morning awakenings, and the ISI, and this is the Insomnia Severity Index, so improving that score. And on the other side, and this was with objective measures, so this is actually using monitors. Magnesium supplementation literally improves concentrations of serum renin, and renin is basically a marker of shifts in your sleep stages. So that lets you know you're going in and out of sleep stages efficiently. Melatonin. Magnesium helps your body to optimize melatonin. And serum cortisol were lowered. All of these things were improved just from magnesium supplementation. This is the number one mineral deficiency in our world today. Over 320 enzymatic processes magnesium is responsible for. So basically, there's over 300 things your body cannot do or cannot do efficiently if magnesium is not present. It's also known as this kind of anti-stress mineral. And we are exposed to a very abnormal amount of stress today. Even if we live a pretty, quote, stress-free life, just the air quality, the food quality, we're not, for the most part, most of us are not out foraging for our food. Like, we're getting deficient food. You know, things are different today, and we need things to help us to adapt and to buffer. Magnesium is one of these critical compounds. And so for that, this is what I use, because taking an oral supplement for this and trying to get it in orally, you're probably not going to be able to get your magnesium levels up to where you need to, because if you take even a little bit more than your bowel tolerance, right? You have a certain bowel tolerance for magnesium. If you take even a little bit more, you'll create disaster pants. Okay? You'll create diarrhea. So this is, and that's not efficient. Like, now we're like flushing out our body. Like, now you've created a flush, right? And you're going to lose minerals and things like that kind of abnormally. So the most efficient way to do this is through a transdermal application, through topical treatment, rubbing magnesium in through your skin. All right, over 99.9% absorbable from this magnesium, not from stuff you'll find out there in the stores. And I've tried, like, we're talking maybe 20% absorbable, and it's lower quality, and you're wasting your money. This is why I use Ease, and I've been using it for so long. And the stories that I've heard from it, it might not just be for somebody improving their sleep quality or for relaxing their muscles or things like that, but just getting people out of pain. The stories that I've heard. And we had one of those stories actually recently on the Model Health Show when we did the live episode in Washington, D.C. And I was told, I had no idea that, you know, somebody was sharing a story, and they shared a story about their mom, you know, who's the grandma, you know, so, and grandma happened to be there. So he passed the mic to her, and she shared her experience and how she's just walking around trying to spray people. Like, oh, you heard, because of the benefits that it had for her. And it was just such a cute story, but also is very, very heartwarming, and it makes me proud, and it makes me so grateful that we have these things available to us. So make sure, if you don't have this already, get yours. Make sure that you have this and use it. Put it next to your nightstand. Put it in your bathroom. Ease Magnesium. So this is EASE Magnesium. So that's easemagnesium.com/model. Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here to up-level your health today.
There's no secrets out there. You know, I love these people that try to say, oh, you know, my 8 secrets to success or so forth. Everyone knows what to do. I love how people come in and, you know, you gotta outwork the other individual. You know, you gotta